Whoever is watching this in high school and college, I can guarantee 90% of you will end up caving. Hey guys, it's Lizzie. So this video is how to stay a virgin in high school, college, and beyond. I'm 24, so I'm making this video for people who are younger than me, who actually want to save sex for marriage. Even though you want that and believe that and feel strongly about that, does not mean it will happen. What I've experienced over the past 5-6 years is that 97% of all the Christians I know who are really serious about their faith, grew up Christian, really involved in their churches, the vast majority of these people ended up caving, having sex with their boyfriend or girlfriend. And I've talked to all of these people, and a majority of them completely regret that it happened.
What if I made up my mind to rely on you?
One of my favorite Bible verses is 1 Peter 5:8. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. And you can apply this to anything, to any sin, to any part of you that is being torn away from God. Don't assume that this is going to be easy, that you're going to be one of the people who is strong and doesn't cave. Be alert. Be careful. So before I go into all the practical advice, actual things you can do to increase your chance of staying a virgin, I need to discuss 2 extremely dangerous misconceptions. So the first misconception is that virginity is a physical thing. So many people have this idea that if they've already had sex, there's no point in going back to being celibate because they've already had sex. And this was a really strong belief in the Roman Empire that Christians argued against. In City of God, St. Augustine condemns this belief where if a woman was raped, she committed suicide because she was no longer a virgin and no longer valuable. And so Augustine attacks this idea, and he says that virginity and celibacy, it's not physical. It's not something that someone takes away from you, but it's something that you are choosing to do. And it's a choice every single day. I've told this to friends, but I believe that it is so much stronger, so much more morally excellent if you were having sex in your relationship and then you stopped and created those boundaries again. And in the prodigal of the lost son parable, I'm not saying that any of you are lost from God, but the point at the end of the story where they're throwing this celebration for someone who is straying from God and then came back, there is more rejoicing in heaven. Angels are rejoicing when you've strayed in one area and then come back to trusting God. One thing that I also find really helpful is making a distinction between what feels right, what are these evolutionary instincts, realities, versus what is moral, what is virtuous, what is good for our souls, what God wants. We are biologically programmed to want sex to make sure that the human race does not die out. There are so many natural selection, evolutionary intuitions and impulses, and it isn't just having sex with everyone you meet. Even things like racism. The reason that racism has been so common throughout history is that if you have a specific tribe, you don't want outsiders to come into your tribe because you see it as a threat. Even things like wanting to abort disabled babies. In the Roman Empire, they would take their disabled babies and leave them on a cliff to die. Evolutionary, beneficial thing to not want people with disabilities part of your tribe. If you're running away from buffalo attacking you, that person will probably be slower. Even things where we're more attracted to someone who has symmetry in their face. We want to befriend, talk to, date someone who's more attractive. Just because a symmetrical face means you have not had many illnesses, diseases. Does this make sense? We have so many really strong evolutionary instincts, impulses, but they're not necessarily moral or good. Another really important thing, understanding why Christianity teaches to only have sex in marriage. God has actual reasons. The church has actual reasons. There are objective sociological findings of how this is beneficial for all of society. Women who only had sex with their husbands only had a 5% chance of divorce. Having only one additional sexual partner before marriage increases your chance of divorce up to 20%. Two sexual partners before marriage, 30%. I've made several videos talking about Christian sexual ethics, and so just being aware of all of these arguments, why the church teaches what it does, educate yourself as much as possible. That will just set you up to have good counter arguments to any of your friends or your significant other.
Had my heart beat underneath your stone cold fingers on me. Can't believe I called this love.
The first thing that is extremely common, even with people who you're in a relationship with, is that one person is pressuring the other person into sex, pressuring them to go further than what they want. Leave the relationship, break up with them. I've even had friends tell me that they didn't really want to lose their virginity, but the guy kind of wanted to, so they felt like they couldn't really say no.
I woke up today and looked myself in the mirror. Said it's time to get out. No, nothing's ever been clearer.
This has happened to so many of my guy friends, so many of my female friends. If you are making out with someone, flirting with someone, talking to someone, dating someone, and you've said that you're celibate and they keep arguing, pushing, stop talking to them, stop dating them, stop flirting with them, stop being alone with them in your room at night, stop making out with them. It's not chill. Just like the 1 Peter verse says, the devil is prowling around like a roaring lion. Be alert.
Yeah, for that I say thank you. Next, thank you. Next, thank you.
Another verse so amazing relating to this, 1 Corinthians 10:23. I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but not everything is constructive. And so technically, a lot of things are not a sin. Hanging out with someone in their apartment late at night, cuddling with someone in bed when you're watching a movie, different specifics of physical in a relationship that are clearly objectively not sex, not oral sex. Just because it's okay, just because it's not sinful, doesn't mean that it's wise, that it's a good thing to do, that it will set you up towards purity. And so stop thinking about it as what is allowed, what is not allowed, what freedom do I have, what am I not supposed to do? Instead, think of what is beneficial, what will contribute towards you living for God. A lot of people are so confident they're going to end up with this person, but you just don't know the future.
One of my brothers dated a wonderful woman for 7 years, was engaged, and even that ended.
I myself have received save the date cards from people and then received a card later on that said the wedding between bride and groom will not take place, which means that two people have ended their engagement.
You do not have omniscient knowledge of what will happen in the future.
I'm sorry to my future love, for the man that left my bed, for making love the way I saved for you inside my head.
My next piece of advice that I would have hated if I'd watched this video a year and a half ago, my old self would have hated that I said this. Massively disagreed, thought it was so legalistic, but I really want you to be in the 10%, and I want to help you guys out and warn you of what is likely to happen. Try as hard as possible to not be in a relationship with someone who doesn't value celibacy. If you meet someone and they want to have sex in their relationship, but the reason they're not is because you are the only person in that relationship who wants to stay a virgin until marriage. I was so naive before, and I believe so strongly that it's easy, that it's possible. The reason so many of my friends caved, it was usually the girl who was more serious about staying a virgin, being celibate, and then her boyfriend would be less religious, agnostic, not really care. Eventually, the person with more physical boundaries will cave to the person person with less physical boundaries. The best metaphor I have to describe this is, imagine you're at the top of a waterfall. And you know how there's the two bars on the waterfall? You're holding on to the bars and then your legs are like this. And then when you let go of the bars, you fall down the waterfall. So if you are a Christian or you want to stay a virgin until marriage, you are holding on really strongly to that bar. And then you're also holding hands with the person who would have sex in the relationship. So if you let go, you will be pulled down the water slide. It's up to you. Even though they will not disrespect you, not argue with you about it, they won't like pull you so hard that you let go. Wait a year and a half, wait 2 years. The current is so strong, and so you'll start second guessing yourself, come up with creative interpretations of the Bible where it's okay to have sex in a dating relationship. Because of these really, really strong evolutionary instincts to reproduce, that will manipulate your mind to believe that you're rationally coming to this conclusion. Christian relationship, or a relationship with people of any religion where both people come into the relationship wanting to remain celibate. You're holding on to one of the bars at the waterfall, you're holding hands with the person you're in a relationship with, and they are also holding on to the bar. So there's this water slide current so strong, and you're both holding on and you're both holding hands. What will happen? And even just in the moment when you're making out, someone may loosen their grasp or completely let go, but then they're still holding on to the other person who believes so strongly to save sex for marriage. If that happens, they can be like, stop, I got you, hold on to it again. If one of you loses control, the other person is still holding on, and you can keep each other accountable. There's a waterfall current. We were created, ingrained to have sex, to reproduce. And so of course it's gonna be really, really, really hard. Of course there will be all this self-deception to cave, but if you can be with someone who's also holding on just as hard as you are, you're so much more likely to be in the 10%. And I hate that I have to be so intense and black and white in explaining this, but all I'm saying is at the beginning of the relationship, ask the other person, what are your ideas about boundaries? And just have the expectation that eventually you're going to match their boundary. It has even happened to me, not Trevor, and not anything even close to having sex, but I've had very conservative fundamentalist boundaries. And because I was with someone who was more chill about physical boundaries, unknowingly, without even trying to, I became more liberal with my physical boundaries because the person I was with was like that. If you're at a point where you've not been going to church every week, most of your friends are not Christian, you're not involved in Bible studies or friend groups from your church, everything around you is these TV shows, music you're listening to that promote casual sex. All of your friends are also having casual sex. All of your Christian friends have also caved. If you're surrounded by that environment, you're likely to cave to that environment. So that's why I really love Catholicism, where it's a mortal sin to not go to Mass every single week. I made a whole video explaining that, but God's intent with us meeting for church every week is that it helps you remain strong in your convictions. So often we think that by ourselves, that individually we can live for God. But that is such a lie, such a trap to fall into, to believe that you by yourself can live for God, can be a Christian. We need that community around us. And this is something else I've recommended in a lot of my videos. Discuss with your best friends who are Christians details of your physical relationships, details of how far you're going physically. Things that would be really awkward and cringy for me to say directly on my channel, which is why I did in my How Far Is Too Far video. Just keeping yourself accountable with your friends is really helpful. Some other things that contribute to this. The way I grew up, we did not watch TV. I did not listen to a ton of secular music. We didn't watch a lot of movies. To this day, I rarely ever watch movies or watch TV. I'm not at all saying we shouldn't listen to music, we shouldn't watch movies, we shouldn't watch TV. But I think part of the reason that it's been a lot easier for me to remain a virgin is because I was not subtly influenced by our culture. I think we don't even realize how powerful music is. I was at an Orthodox Bible study once. It was challenging us, can you recognize Jesus' voice? Are you listening to Jesus' voice throughout the day? What are you exposing yourself to? What are you listening to? And so if you spend a lot of time listening to music that's constantly talking about sex in a really casual way, if you're watching a lot of TV shows, movies, where there's a couple in the show and they end up having sex after knowing each other for a short period of time, if you're exposing your mind to all of these things, of course it will subtly influence the way you think about sex. I did not start listening to a lot of secular music or really watching TV at all until I was in college, maybe when I was 16, 17 as well. But I'm really grateful to myself that I protected my mind as I was growing up from being subtly affected by a culture that views casual sex as the norm. And so I'm not at all being fundamentalist and telling you to stop listening to music, to stop watching TV, but just be careful. If you spend 45 minutes watching an episode of a show when you get home from school or from work, are you also spending 45 minutes reading the Bible, praying with your family and friends, listening to a Christian song, going to mass? How are you spending your free time? I've talked about the Bishop Barron Word on Fire app in other videos. It is like a Catholic Netflix where you can listen to 45-minute talks about God and scripture and Christian history. Think in depth about how you're spending your time, what you are putting in your ears, what you're watching and listening to. Again, the devil is prowling around like a roaring lion. Be on alert. We can't just chill, hang out, not think in depth about how to be a Christian. We should be constantly alert and aware, trying to live for God, seeing this as a race. Jesus says that narrow is the way, that it's difficult to be a Christian. It's not just a waterfall having to do with celibacy, but every part of our life. We have really strong forces pushing us away from God, and so we have to intentionally try so hard to fight against that. And the way to best understand sexual ethics is that it's less about what is best for your situation in the moment. A lot of people come up with exceptions. I'm using birth control with my boyfriend. I'm not going to get pregnant out of wedlock. I think we are going to end up with each other someday. For our individual situation, it's fine. It's not about what feels right, what you believe is good in the moment for your situation. God cares so much about what is good collectively for all of society. Because we have so much casual sex, we have a really high abortion rate, and we have an even higher amount of children being raised by a single parent. We have a world right now where everyone has access to birth control, but we still have this really high abortion rate, this really high rate of people getting pregnant out of wedlock, children in single family homes. It's so harmful for children to not grow up with both of their parents. There's so many stats where especially guys who grow up without a father, they're more likely to commit crimes, to start doing drugs, to act out in school, to not go to college. So if people start being exceptions and having sex in individual relationships, then it encourages this idea that sex is only for unity in the relationship, only for pleasure, rather than also being about having children, having a stable home for children. And so yes, in your individual situation, you might think, I'm using an IVF, we're not gonna get pregnant. I take my birth control every day. I'm not gonna have to get an abortion. I'm not gonna have a kid outside of marriage. I know we're gonna eventually get married. Why should we not be able to have sex? God does not care as much about your individual situation. He cares about long-term, what is best for you, what is best for everyone. So I hope that this really helps to understand that just because it's this strong instinct and impulse, you choosing to not have sex with your girlfriend or with your boyfriend, you are helping create a culture where sex is seen as being not just pleasure, unity in the relationship, but also being for having children. By choosing to be celibate until marriage, you are contributing to more children being born in a home where both parents have made a life commitment to raise children together. Also, I've made several several videos talking about Christian sexual ethics, 5 reasons to stay a virgin until marriage, in which I talked about neurotransmitters, how you're so much more likely to get divorced if you have sex before marriage, all these stats and effects on society. And then the other video I've made is just a biblical exegesis of sex and marriage and the church, all of that. And so I have an entire playlist about sexual ethics that's going to be at the end. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!